think you can beat me, Vance? You're nothing!
Stop!
Do you ever feel it? That moment when every choice you've made in life backs you into a corner. On one side, the most powerful man in Seattle, a guy ready to burn the world to get what he wants. On the other, me, a bankrupt tech genius, a failure trying to protect a secret bigger than my own life. The question you're probably asking is the same one I've wrestled with 100 times. How does a guy with nothing left to lose end up in a billion-dollar showdown? To understand, we can't start here. We have to go back 72 hours, back to that fateful, rain-soaked night. The night I met the kid. 3 days ago, my only enemy was myself. Memories of a company that was once everything. The echo of praise now turned to mockery. Every raindrop felt like a reminder of my collapse. I thought that was rock bottom. I thought I couldn't sink any lower. Man, was I wrong. Because in that desperate night, fate threw a burden into my life. A scrawny, silent kid with eyes that spoke volumes. A kid I initially just wanted out of my sight. I had no idea that tiny burden was the key to unraveling a conspiracy darker than anything I could have imagined. And in her hands, this. A harmless-looking hard drive. At least, that's how it appeared. Inside, it wasn't family photos or homework. It held a deadly secret of Croft Industries. A secret worth not just billions of dollars, but potentially thousands of lives. A project codenamed Chimera. In the next 72 hours, I'd be hunted. I'd face betrayal from the person I trusted most. And I'd have to answer a question. Does kindness even exist in a world bought and sold by money and power? This isn't just a story about a broke millionaire and an heiress kid. This is a story about the cost of redemption. About how, when you've lost everything, you finally see the one thing truly worth fighting for. And it all started with a single choice in that rainy alley. And it all began with a simple choice in that rainy alley. The alley was tucked behind Seattle's bustling Pike Place market. The stench of fresh fish, wet garbage, and cold rain mixed into a thick haze of neglect. Neon lights from the shops across the street spilled over, turning puddles on the ground into shattered, shimmering mirrors. And there, in the darkest corner, curled up behind a dumpster, was a small figure. I should have kept walking. I should have ignored it. My life was already a wreck. I didn't need anyone else's burden. But something, maybe the defiance in the kid's eyes when she looked up at me, stopped me cold. She wasn't scared. Those green eyes, too old for a child, burned with a chilling resilience. "Get lost," she whispered, her voice hoarse but clear. I sighed, my breath forming a thin mist in the cold air. "Look, kid, it's practically freezing out here. I've got nothing to my name, but at least I've got a dry place to crash." I expected her to refuse, maybe bolt. But she just stared, those eyes locked on me, sizing me up, like she could see right through a washed-up loser. After what felt like an eternity of silence, she quietly stood and followed me, keeping a safe distance. She wasn't accepting help. She was making a calculated trade, a temporary roof for safety tonight. My apartment was a brutal testament to my fall. The designer leather sofa I couldn't bear to sell was the only decoration in an empty room. The fridge held a single carton of nearly expired milk, and the stack of unpaid bills on the coffee table glowed brighter than the lone lamp in the place. The kid stood at the threshold, clutching her worn backpack to her chest, her eyes scanning the room. Not with curiosity, but like a wild animal mapping out escape routes. "Bathroom's down the hall," I said, breaking the stifling silence. "I'll find you something dry to wear." When I came back with an old t-shirt of mine, she'd already cleaned up. Still silent. She sat on the edge of the sofa, back straight, on guard. She looked at me, and that gaze drilled into my head again. "Why are you helping me?" The question was blunt, not a trace of gratitude. I let out a dry, tired laugh. "Honestly, kid, I don't know. Maybe. Because when my company tanked, nobody reached out a hand. I know what it's like to hit rock bottom." That seemed to be an answer she could accept. She didn't say another word, just quietly took the sandwich I offered. That night, she slept on the sofa, and I lay in bed. But sleep wouldn't come. My mind churned with failures, bad choices, and the faces that once cheered me on, but now turned away. Then, around 2 a.m, the silence shattered. A piercing scream, raw with terror. Not a child's tantrum, but the cry of someone facing death. I bolted out of bed, rushing to the living room. The kid, Maya, was thrashing on the sofa, her small body convulsing in a nightmare. "Uncle Julian? No, the fire! It's too hot!" she moaned, tears streaming down her face. I knelt beside her, gently shaking her shoulder. "Maya, wake up! You're safe! It's just a dream!" Her eyes snapped open, wild and disoriented. But as I touched her shoulder to calm her, my hand brushed something hard and cold under her shirt. She was clutching it like it was the only thing in the world. For a brief moment, still half dazed, her grip loosened. I saw it. A small portable hard drive, its scratched metal casing unmarked, completely out of place for a homeless kid. The second she noticed my gaze, she jolted, fully awake. Panic gave way to a cold, defensive wall. She yanked her hand back, hiding the drive under her shirt, and fixed me with a wary stare. The next morning, the air in the apartment was heavier. Logic told me to do the right thing. I was a broke guy in a place I'd soon be evicted from. I couldn't take care of a kid, especially one clearly in deep trouble. I picked up my phone, fingers hovering over the number for Child Protective Services. It was the responsible move. But when she saw me with the phone, her face changed. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. Her breathing quickened, her shoulders shook, her eyes wide with panic. It was the reaction of someone who'd been betrayed and abandoned before. I looked at her, curled up in fear, then at the spot on the table where I knew she'd hidden that mysterious drive. A scream about Uncle Julian, a fire, a cold, metal secret. In that moment, I made my choice. I powered off the phone and set it down. "All right," I said, my own voice sounding foreign to me. "Just one more night, a promise I didn't know would pull me into the heart of a conspiracy darker than Seattle's cold, rainy night." The promise of just one more night hung heavy in the stifling air of my apartment the next morning. I'd broken my own rules. I'd chosen to hold on to a mystery, a mess I had no business untangling. All night, the image of the kid's nightmare and the cold weight of that hard drive haunted me. Maya, for her part, retreated into her silent shell. She ate breakfast mechanically, eyes glued to her cereal bowl, as if it were the only thing in the world she could control. We existed in a taut silence, both knowing something was about to snap. Then came a knock at the door. It was Ava Chen, a college friend, now a respected freelance investigative journalist, the only one who didn't turn her back on me after I lost everything. Ava had the sharp eyes of someone used to seeing through lies. She stepped in, bringing the scent of coffee and the crisp morning air, but her smile faded when she saw Maya sitting quietly at the kitchen table. "Ethan," she started, her voice laced with concern. "I thought you were kidding when you said you were looking after a kid." "It's a long story, Ava," I replied, my voice heavy with exhaustion. "I found her on the street the other night. It was raining and cold." Ava narrowed her eyes, her professional instincts kicking in. She didn't look at Maya like a child, but like an unexplained piece of a larger puzzle. Did she say who she is? Where her parents are? No, I admitted. She doesn't talk much. Just then, Ava's gaze flicked to the window, down to the street below. The concern on her face shifted to intense focus. That car, she said softly. That black sedan. It's been there since I arrived. I followed her gaze. It was an ordinary-looking car, the kind you'd never notice. But Ava was different. Something wrong? I asked. The guy in the driver's seat, she replied, her voice lowering. That's Elias Thorne. He's no thug. He's a lawyer, a fixer for people like Julian Croft who don't want to get their hands dirty. I've seen him a couple of times while digging into Croft Industries deals. The name Julian Croft hit me like a punch to the chest. Uncle Julian, Maya's scream from her nightmare echoed in my head. A chilling coincidence. Why would a billionaire tech CEO's fixer be parked outside a broke nobody's apartment? Ava seemed to have the same thought. She pulled out her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. Let me see if Croft's been tied to any recent scandals. That's when Maya edged closer, probably curious about the sudden tension in the room. Then she froze. Her breath caught, her eyes locked onto Ava's tablet screen. I followed her gaze. On the screen was an article from a major Seattle news outlet. My blood ran cold. The headline read, Prescott family's sole heir still missing after tragic accident. Below it, a photo from a formal event. A girl, about 7, in an expensive dress, hair neatly styled, standing beside her parents. That face, those resolute green eyes, unmistakable. It was Maya. Ava stammered, her voice thick with shock. Prescott? That's the biotech company Croft Industries acquired 6 months ago, right after its founders died in a seaplane crash. She looked up at me, then at Maya, and all the scattered pieces snapped into a horrifying whole. Oh my God, Ethan, Ava whispered. The kid. She's Serafina Prescott, the heir to that entire fortune. Everyone thought she died with her parents in the crash. And Uncle Julian, the one she screamed about in her nightmare, was none other than Julian Croft, the man who'd taken over her parents' company and her only remaining legal guardian. I looked down at Serafina, or Maya, standing motionless, her face pale. The defensive wall she'd built so carefully seemed to crumble. She wasn't just a mysterious homeless kid anymore. She was a witness, a survivor, and a target in a deadly hunt. My rundown apartment, once a temporary shelter, had officially become the epicenter of a lethal chase. And my promise of just one more night had become a sentence, binding me to this child's fate. Silence enveloped the room, thicker and heavier than the damp air outside. The three of us, each caught in our own storm. The photo of Serafina Prescott on Ava's tablet was like a black hole, swallowing all sound and reason. Ava broke the silence first. Her journalist instincts snapped from shock to action. We have to move, she said, her voice firm. Right now. Elias Thorne isn't parked down there to watch the rain. He's waiting. Maybe he knows the kid's here, or maybe he's just tailing you, Ethan. Either way, we can't stay. My head spun. Just minutes ago, my biggest problem was scraping together next month's rent. Now I was harboring a missing kid presumed dead, the heir to a massive fortune, hunted by the fixer of one of the most powerful men on the planet. A wave of helplessness and overwhelm crashed over me, but then a small, cold hand grabbed the hem of my jacket. It was Maya, or rather, Serafina. The panic in her eyes was gone, replaced by a frightening acceptance. The truth's exposure seemed to free her from the burden of hiding. She looked at me, then at Ava, and whispered words that sent a chill down my spine. They want this. She tugged her collar down, revealing the hard drive she'd kept hidden. It was no longer just an odd object. It was the heart of everything. The reason her parents were killed? The thing Julian Croft was desperate to get his hands on. "All right," Ava said, catching on instantly. "Here's the plan. I'll go downstairs, make a scene with the doorman to distract them. You two have exactly 5 minutes to take the back fire escape and grab a taxi. Don't use your phone. Get to somewhere public and crowded, and I'll find a way to reach you." But where? We couldn't go to Ava's place. That'd be the first spot they'd check. We had no money, no allies. Then, in a surge of desperation, a name flashed in my mind, one I'd tried to forget. Claire Redding, my ex-girlfriend, the one who left me the moment my bank account hit zero. But she lived in a high-end condo in Belltown with 24/7 security. The last place in the world Croft's people would think to look for me. A desperate move, but our only option. I convinced Ava it was the perfect trap because it was so absurd. She hesitated, but finally agreed. The plan came together fast. Ava headed downstairs, and I heard her arguing loudly with the manager about a lost package, our signal. I grabbed Serafina's hand, and we bolted into the darkness of the fire escape. In a taxi reeking of stale coffee, I used a burner phone Ava had given me to call Claire. Her voice on the other end was laced with surprise and a hint of coldness. I pleaded, saying I was in deep trouble and needed a safe place for just one night. I didn't give details, just leaned on the faint thread of our old connection. After a long pause, she relented. "All right, Ethan," she said, her tone softening slightly. "Come over. The condo's the same." A flicker of hope sparked in me. Maybe I'd misjudged her. Maybe, deep down, the person I once loved was still there. But I didn't know that, as soon as she hung up, Claire wasn't prepping a guest room. She opened her laptop, rereading the article about the Prescott heiress's disappearance. She saw the reward for any information leading to the girl's recovery. A life-changing sum. Bitterness from my failures, greed, and a self-justifying belief she was doing the right thing won out. She picked up her phone and dialed the hotline in the article, a line straight to Julian Croft's security team. We were blocks from Claire's building when the burner phone buzzed. It was Ava, her voice frantic, urgent. "Ethan, don't go there! Abort now! It's a trap!" He called in more guys after I left. My source says a call came from Claire Redding's number. My heart stopped. Hope shattered into pieces. I yelled at the driver, "Turn around! Get us out of here!" But it was too late. In the rearview mirror, I saw that familiar black sedan speeding up behind us. Elias Thorne was there. Claire had sold us out. "Get out!" I shouted, tossing a handful of cash at the stunned driver. I yanked Serafina out of the taxi, and we dove into a nearby small market, weaving through stalls and crowds. Sirens and shouts blended into a chaotic hum. We kept running, not daring to look back, slipping deeper into the maze of Seattle's cold, concrete alleys. In the heart of the city, we weren't just fleeing a billionaire killer. Now we were running from the ghosts of my own past. The only safe haven I could think of had become the deadliest trap. We were utterly alone. Our breaths came fast, forming white puffs in the cold night air. We crouched behind rotting crates in a forgotten loading dock, surrounded by the stench of mildew and garbage. The city's sounds felt distant, leaving only the thumping of our hearts and the patter of rain on the tin roof. Claire's betrayal hit harder than Elias Thorne's pursuit. It didn't just strip away our hideout, it shattered my last hope that some shred of my past was still good. Guilt and stupidity swallowed me. I'd walked us straight into that trap. I sank down, face buried in my hands. "I'm sorry, kid," I whispered, voice hoarse. "It's my fault. I shouldn't have—" A small hand touched my shoulder. I looked up to see Serafina. No blame in her eyes, just an eerie calm. She was used to adults letting her down. Beating yourself up won't keep us alive, she said, her voice far older than her years. They still don't have what they want. She pulled the hard drive from her jacket. That cold metal object glowed like a burning coal in the dark, both a curse and our only weapon. She was right. As long as we had it, we had a chance, however slim. Her resilience yanked me out of my self-pity. Despair wasn't an option. Ava, I said. We need to reach Ava. But how? Every electronic device was a double-edged sword. Then I remembered. Ava, with her journalist's caution, had once told me about her contingency plans. If anything goes wrong, she'd said, go to a public library. 10 a.m., log into an incognito browser, use a throwaway email, and send a message to Nightingale77. That's me. It was a gamble, but our only one. The next morning, we blended into the crowd heading to the Seattle Central Library. My heart pounded every time someone glanced our way too long. We found a row of computers tucked in a corner, and I followed Ava's instructions. Minutes later, a reply popped up. No greeting, just an address and a room number. A cheap motel on the outskirts. The motel room reeked of disinfectant and loneliness. Ava was waiting, her face etched with worry. I'm sorry, Ethan. I should have warned you about Claire. It's not your fault. I cut her off. What do we do now? We can't keep running forever. Then we need to know what we're holding, Ava said, her eyes fixed on the hard drive in Serafina's hand. She pulled out an encrypted laptop and plugged in the drive. It's locked with biometrics, she muttered, glancing at Serafina. You ready, kid? Serafina nodded without hesitation, placing her small thumb on the sensor. A dry click sounded. The lock opened. Ava dove into the files. The first folders were packed with financial records, internal emails, and detailed plans proving Julian Croft had embezzled funds and orchestrated the accident that sank his brother's yacht. Ironclad evidence, enough to put him away for decades. We've got it, I said, exhaling in relief. Hold on, Ava said, her voice tense. There's another folder, double encrypted. It's called Chimera. After minutes of intense work, Ava cracked the second layer of encryption. What we saw next froze the room. It wasn't documents. It was a demo video. The screen showed drone footage gliding over a desert setup resembling a small city. A cold, detached voice explained the combat automation testing phase. We watched the system's AI lock onto targets, vehicles, buildings, even moving mannequins mimicking people. Green boxes snapped onto each target, then, with a simulated click, turned red. Target neutralized flashed across the screen. The video cut to another scene. Julian Croft in a sleek boardroom, pitching to a group with blurred faces. His voice brimmed with pride. With Project Chimera, we're not just selling a defense system, we're reshaping the global security market. Autonomous deterrence, no human intervention needed, gives our clients an absolute edge. Chilling. He wasn't just a killer for profit. He was an arms dealer, ready to sell an automated killing machine to the highest bidder, consequences be damned. This wasn't just a family tragedy anymore. It was a global threat. Silence gripped us after the video ended. We looked at each other, knowing there was no turning back. We can't hand this to the cops or the FBI, Ava said, breaking the quiet. Julian's network is too vast. He'd know instantly and bury it, along with us. She locked eyes with me. We can't fight him in the shadows. He owns the shadows. A cold clarity hit me. Fear and despair melted, replaced by something else. Rage, iron resolve. Then, I said, my voice steadier than ever, we drag him into the light, expose it all, to the whole world. My words echoed in the cramped motel room, a bold, half-crazy declaration of war. Drag Julian Croft into the light, expose everything to the world. It sounded epic. But Ava, with her journalist's pragmatism, snapped us back to reality. "Expose it how, Ethan?" she asked, arms crossed. "We can't just send an anonymous email to the Seattle Times and hope they buy it. Julian Croft owns half this city, and the other half owes him favors. Any evidence we release through normal channels will be squashed before it sees daylight. They'll call us frauds, say that hard drive is a fake cooked up by a bitter has-been." She was right. We couldn't play by their rules. We needed a stage. A moment Julian couldn't control, couldn't silence, couldn't deny. Then Ava smiled, a sharp, icy grin of someone who'd just found the enemy's weak spot. "Unless," she said, "we use his own stage against him." She opened her laptop and pulled up the Croft Industries website. Splashed across the homepage was a glitzy, oversized banner. Infinity Gala, Shaping the Future. Global live stream. That was it. Croft Industries' biggest event of the year, where Julian would unveil his latest tech to investors, media, and millions watching live worldwide. It was set to take place at the Museum of Pop Culture, or MoPop, one of Seattle's most iconic and heavily secured landmarks, a fortress, but also the perfect opportunity. "Security's going to be a nightmare," I said, a cold jolt of adrenaline running down my spine. "But it's the only place our words will carry weight," Ava countered. "If we can hijack the presentation even for 30 seconds and play the Chimera video, it's game over. The whole world will be the jury." The plan took shape, a reckless patchwork of desperation and our combined expertise. We became an unlikely squad. Ava, with her press badge, could get inside legitimately. She'd be our eyes and ears, scoping out the building's layout, security camera positions, and, most crucially, the tech setup for the presentation. My role was the tech side. Me, a guy who'd once built complex security systems, now had to break one. Croft's system will be on a closed network to block outside hacks, I explained, my brain firing up after months of dormancy. But there's always a weak link. A service port a tech forgot to close, an overlooked internal Wi-Fi connection, or some employee's laptop tied to the main network. I need to find that gap. I can write a code, a Trojan horse, hidden in a harmless video file. If we can get it into their system, I can take remote control. We both turned to Serafina. She'd been listening quietly, her eyes sharp with intelligence. "What about you?" I asked gently. "You don't have to do this, Maya. It's too dangerous." She looked me dead in the eyes, and for the first time, I saw a real fire blazing there. "My name's Serafina," she said, her voice steady, unwavering. "And this is my fight. He took my family. I'm taking their legacy back." She took a deep breath. "I know Uncle Julian. He's paranoid about losing control. At every big presentation, he has a private control room right by the stage. There's a terminal in there that can manually override everything. He never fully trusts anyone, not even his own systems." That was it. The final piece. We didn't need to hack the whole network remotely. We just needed someone to get into that room at the right moment and plug in a USB with my code. The plan was set, audacious and riddled with risks. Ava would go in as a journalist to scout and locate the control room. Serafina and I would disguise ourselves as catering staff, slipping into the backstage chaos. My job was to neutralize the guard outside the control room. Serafina, with her small frame and quickness, would sneak in and deliver the final blow. We spent the rest of the day preparing. Ava brought back uniforms and fake staff badges. I hunched over her laptop, lines of code flickering across the screen, my fingers flying over the keyboard with a skill I hadn't tapped in 6 months. Serafina memorized every inch of the MoPop building layout Ava had snapped photos of. As dusk fell, painting Seattle's sky red through the motel window, the room grew still. We weren't fugitives anymore. We were hunters, No turning back. Tonight, we'd either expose the truth or vanish forever in Julian Croft's shadow. The Museum of Pop Culture, or MoPop, on the night of the Infinity Gala, looked like an alien ship landed in downtown Seattle. Its metallic shell reflected light from hundreds of lamps, twisting like a symphony of glass and steel. Inside, the air was thick with expensive perfume and the smugness of the elite. Champagne glasses sparkled, whispers of million-dollar deals hummed, and at the center of it all was a massive stage where Julian Croft was set to unveil the future of tech. A future we knew was built on lies and blood. Ava blended seamlessly into the press crowd, her journalist badge a talisman. Through a tiny earpiece, her calm voice guided me like a lifeline in the chaos. Security's heavy at the main entrance and stage area. The East Service hallway looks quieter. The private control room is on the second floor, right behind the main screen, with one guard. Meanwhile, Serafina and I, in ill-fitting catering uniforms, navigated the event's underbelly, a world of noisy kitchens, stainless steel corridors, and shouted orders. My heart pounded like a war drum, each step heavy with the fear of being caught. But when I glanced at Serafina, I saw only focus. She wasn't a scared kid anymore. She was a soldier on a mission. We reached the hallway behind the stage. Just as Ava said, a single guard stood before an unmarked door. He was tall, alert, his eyes constantly scanning. A direct confrontation would be suicide. I signaled Serafina to wait in the shadows. Stepping back, I spotted an electrical panel for the auxiliary lighting. With my experience, I knew tripping the right breaker could cause a small glitch. I acted. A row of decorative lights at the hall's end flickered out with a faint buzz. The guard frowned, muttered a curse, and pulled out his radio, moving toward the issue to check. That was it, a window of seconds. "Go," I whispered. Serafina slipped through the door like a ghost. The small, cold room glowed with the dim blue light of multiple screens. There, on a standalone desk, was the manual override terminal. She didn't waste a moment. She pulled the USB from her pocket and plugged it in. A small progress bar appeared on the screen. Uploading file. 5 seconds. 10. Time stretched endlessly. My heart felt like it might burst. The guard could return any second. Then the door swung open. It wasn't the guard. Our worst nightmare had come true. Julian Croft stood there. He paused, surprise flashing across his face. But it quickly morphed into a cold, amused smile, like a cat cornering a mouse. "What a delightful surprise," he said, his voice smooth as velvet, the bankrupt and the lost niece teaming up for a little drama. Charming. He didn't yell for security. He was too smart for that. Instead, he slowly pulled out his phone, fingers gliding across the screen, likely sending a silent alert. He stepped toward us, radiating the confidence of a predator certain of victory. "Hand over the hard drive, Serafina. Don't make this worse than it needs to be." I stepped in front of her. "Stay away from her, Julian." He laughed, a scornful bark. "You, Vance, what do you think you can do?" In that moment, Serafina saw it. The progress bar was nearly full. 98%. Just a few more seconds. She did something even I didn't expect. She locked eyes with Julian. My parents knew about Chimera, didn't they? Her voice rang out, clear and steely. "That's why you killed them." The words hit Julian's arrogance like a sledgehammer. He froze for a second, maybe shocked by the courage of a child he'd underestimated. That second was all we needed. Ding. 100%. Upload complete. The main screen outside, where Julian was set to appear, went dark. The crowd began to murmur. Serafina, with one final act of defiance, hit enter, and then Julian Croft's world collapsed. The Chimera video played across every screen in the hall. The cold, detached narration of an autonomous killing machine blared through the state-of-the-art sound system. The faces of investors, politicians, and reporters shifted from confusion to horror. Julian let out a furious roar, his calm mask finally shattered. He lunged for Serafina. But I was there. With every ounce of strength, I tackled him to the floor. Not to win, but to buy time. The door burst open. Guards rushed in, followed by Ava, her camera capturing everything. The hall outside descended into chaos. Amid the shouts and flashing security lights, I looked at Serafina. She stood there, staring at the screens exposing the truth to the world. We hadn't just dragged him into the light, we'd turned his own stage into a courtroom, and the world was our witness. The chaos that followed was a blur of flashing lights and echoing voices. The FBI, tipped off by Ava in advance, stormed in and took control swiftly. Julian Croft, no longer the composed king, shouted denials and empty threats as he was cuffed and led away. His face, once a symbol of Seattle's power and success, now twisted with rage and defeat, was captured by dozens of cameras, including Ava's, recording every historic moment. While medics checked a scrape on my forehead, a gentle FBI agent approached Serafina. She didn't interrogate her. She just draped a warm blanket over the girl's small shoulders and asked softly, "Are you okay?" For the first time in days, Serafina's defensive wall crumbled completely, and she broke down, crying, not from fear, but from relief. Weeks later, the media storm had calmed slightly. Julian Croft faced a litany of charges, from fraud and industrial espionage to conspiracy to commit murder. The evidence from the hard drive was undeniable. I was summoned to a sleek law office downtown, representing the Prescott estate. Across from me sat Mrs. Winters, a respected attorney and a social worker. Mrs. Winters slid a check across the polished mahogany desk. The number on it could have rebuilt not one, but 10 Innovate Dynamics companies. It was a reward for finding Serafina, plus a thank you from the trust. "With this money, Mr. Vance," Mrs. Winters said, "you could start over. You could take back everything you lost." I stared at the check. It was a path back to my old life. Boardroom meetings, funding rounds, sleepless nights chasing growth metrics, everything I once thought I wanted. But that vision felt hollow now. "What about Serafina?" I asked, pushing the check back. "What happens to her?" Mrs. Winters looked surprised. "She'll have the best care. The trust will handle everything. We'll find a suitable guardian, maybe distant relatives in Europe or a carefully vetted family." She was talking about turning a kid's life into a managed transaction, a list of strangers. I thought of the rainy alley, her screams in the nightmare, her bravery facing her enemy. She didn't need a wealth manager. She needed a family. "Me," I said, my voice steady with unexpected certainty. "I want to apply for guardianship." Silence filled the room. Mrs. Winters studied me, her professional demeanor giving way to genuine curiosity. The social worker smiled encouragingly. In that moment, I knew I'd made the right choice. I'd turned down the road back to my past for a path toward a future I couldn't predict. 1 year later, Seattle's sky was a rare, clear blue. Serafina, or Lily, the name she now preferred, sat with me on a bench in Discovery Park, looking out at the shimmering waters of Puget Sound. Julian's trial had ended with a life sentence. Croft Industries was undergoing a drastic restructuring under a new board. Lily was no longer the scrawny, guarded kid I'd met. She laughed more, a bright sound that echoed in the air. We didn't use her vast fortune for yachts or mansions. Instead, we founded the Vance Prescott Foundation, providing scholarships and tech training for kids from tough backgrounds. Her parents' legacy wasn't just money, it was innovation and hope. We were carrying it forward our way. She leaned her head on my shoulder, watching ships glide in the distance. "Uncle Ethan," she asked, "do you ever miss your old company? Being someone important?" I smiled, wrapping an arm around her. I thought about my life, its collapse, its rebirth, the wealth I'd lost and the wealth I'd found. "Back then," I said slowly, "I thought success was building big things, billion-dollar companies. I was wrong. Real success is rebuilding people, starting with yourself." Lily smiled. We sat there in peaceful silence, watching the sunset. A man who'd lost everything, and a girl who once had nothing but a deadly secret. Together we'd found something worth more than an empire. We'd found family. And that, in the end, was the legacy worth fighting for.